So for today's project, we are going to be creating another crocheted piece. Everybody seemed to really enjoy the crocheted bracelet I did a few weeks back, so I thought, well, let's just try something with wire. So today we're going to be using whatever beads you have. I mean, I will put a list of everything that I use today, and these are just some of our inexpensive glass pearls. But this is the perfect stash buster necklace. You can use whatever size you like. I'm using some 6s and some 8s. You can use, fire polish. You can use semi-precious. You can use real pearls. You can use freshwater pearls. You can use the glass pearls. You can use anything you have. And if you like a sort of a mixed kind of combination for a bit of a boho kind of look, you can mix and match colors. So really, this is the perfect thing if you have all kinds of odds and sods of beads in your stash. So what you are going to need is some really fine wire. I like 26 or 28 gauge wire. We only have 26 at the moment, so I'm just using some 26 gauge craft wire. And I've got 21 beads on here. So I start with 2 smaller ones, just to, it was kind of the way that I did it, but you don't have to. I will show you how forgiving this necklace is, and you can just make it your own and completely do what you like. But I've just taken my spool, I haven't cut my wire, and I've loaded up 21 beads in sort of an assorted pattern. There is really no pattern at all. So I just preloaded those so that you didn't have to watch that part of it. I'm also going to be using some chain today. And I actually will complete a necklace. So I've got some closed jump rings. So these are just a soldered ring, and these are an 8mm. So it's going to be super simple. It's more of a technique kind of video, but we'll just keep it nice and easy today. I have a lobster clasp, and I have some small jump rings. And like I said, I will list down everything that I've used today. So for our crochet needle, no, crochet hook. Okay, everybody corrected me because I always say needle. It's a crochet hook. So thank you to everybody that corrected me last time. So this is a 1/9, whatever that means, or a 5.5. It does not matter what size you use, but the bigger the better. I have ones that are slightly larger and they work fine. So anything around the 5 to 6 or something like that, or even maybe up to a 7 would be fine. So you just want a nice big chunky one. And again, if you don't have these, hit up your local thrift stores. Sometimes people will take them there, or you can probably, find them at any local craft store of any kind. I know they have them at, Walmart and Hobby Lobby and, Michael's and those kind of places. So any place where you can buy craft supplies or your local thrift stores, you should be able to find those. Or if you have a grandma, ask her. She might have one kicking around. And then for tools, we're going to be using a pair of bent chain nose pliers, a pair of round nose pliers, some chain nose pliers, and a pair of cutters. So let's get started. So if you watched my video a couple weeks ago on my crochet wrap bracelet, this one is exactly the same, but it's just a little bit different and kind of a little bit more, I would say not hard, but it's a little harder to work with wire, and it takes a little more patience. So this can also take a little bit more time, but I really love this technique, and I used to teach this back in the store, I think starting about like 10 or 12 years ago. And it was a very popular class because it was a good stash buster and you could just, really make it your own. And I will explain at the end, how you can really customize this and make it your own. So you kind of just have to be a little bit patient. And I think I mentioned on the last one where you have to watch your tension. This one, you don't need to watch your tension so much in that it doesn't matter if they're bigger loops, but you don't want to have small loops because it does make it a little bit harder to pull the wire around the hook. So we're just going to take our end. So I've just got it loaded on, and I try not to have too much wire because you'll end up with your wire going all over the place. And if it kinks, it can break, and then your whole piece will kind of be messed up. So I can't really tell you how much you use, but I think it's about 5 or 6 times more than like it's a 5 to 6 times ratio or something like that of wire. So you do actually use a lot of wire. I used almost a whole spool that was, maybe a quarter gone. So the best thing is just to load it up on here. And now we're going to take just the end, about 6 inches or so, maybe 8 inches. I like to have a little bit more so I've got more to work with. And I'm just going to turn that so that I make like a small loop. Like that. And now I'm just going to, I find the easiest way, now everybody's going to have a different method of doing these kind of things, but for me, I find this is the hardest part to get started. So I just twist that. So I'm just going to twist it around, and I just created like a little loop. And now I can get my first stitch done easily. So I'm going to put my hook in there, and I'm going to bring that underneath the wire like that around, and then pull it through. And that's my first loop. So, you know, it's not going to look so beautiful at the beginning, but it doesn't matter because the way that we finish this off, it doesn't really matter. You'll see what I mean in the end. So I'm going to create one, and then I'm going to do another. And so this is where you have to be careful that you don't tighten that up too much, because it does make it very difficult to get that around your hook if it's too tight. So now we're going to drop a bead down. I'm going to open that up just a little bit. And now I'm going to go around my wire, and I'm just going to sort of ignore that bead. And I find if I hold on to the bead, it gives me something to hang on to. And then I just sort of, I don't tighten it up, but I pull it towards the hook. Now I'm going to do one blank one in between. So it's a bead and then a blank. So we'll do that. And then we'll pull down our bead and go around and pull that through. And so you'll probably think, oh my gosh, this looks kind of like a hodgepodge. And it really does, until the very end when it all comes together and it's like this little miracle of wire and beads, and it just looks so pretty. So again, be mindful that you're not getting any kinks in your wire, because we don't want to have the possibility of this breaking, because this is a finer wire. So just pull that through, and then we'll do a blank one. And you can see now I've sort of switched to having a little bit of tension on my finger. So everybody crochets in a different way. So if you're just learning, just, you know, create your own method that works well. But I kind of do this sort of thing. And then I hold on there, bring it around. And it's very warm in my studio with all my lights on. And so my hands are a little slippery now because it's a very hot day here. So, and you can see I went a little bit tight on that, so I'm going to back up, and now I can get it through. And if I can't, I usually just use my thumbnail and then pull that through. So that's what you're going to end up with, something that looks like that. And you're just going to keep going until the very end. And then when you finish that, at the very end, you're going to finish with, so we started with 2 loops, and you're going to finish with 2 loops. So you're going to crochet around the bead, and then you're going to do 2 blanks on the end. So you're going to have 2 at the beginning and 2 at the end, 1 in between each bead. So now I'm going to switch over to the pre-made ones that I've got, because this would take far too long to do live. So I'm just going to switch over, and I'll be right back. All right, so I have all of my pre-made ones here. So I'm just going to finish off on the very last one here. I've got my last bead. So I'm going to do my loop around my bead, and then I'm going to do 2 blanks. And that's just to give us a little something to work with at the end. And, you know, I struggle with tension. I tend to pull everything really tight. So for me, sometimes I find with the wire, it can be a little hard for me to remember to keep that tension loose. So it's something that you have to sort of master. All right, so I've got my end there. Now, normally I would still have that on the spool, but it was kind of, you know, getting hard to put under the camera. So I just cut mine off. So I'm going to take that out, take out my hook, and then I want to bring this back through the end here. So I'm just going to bring it through that loop there, and then I just pull, and then that locks that in there. Okay, so now what I've got is 3 pieces that are sort of the same in that they all have 2 loops on the end, and then I've got 2 beads, and then just sort of an assortment of patterns. And they kind of all match up, but that's the nice thing about this, is if it doesn't all match up on either end, it does not matter at all. So what you're going to do is you're going to gather these together. I've got wires everywhere here, so if you hear a bunch of noise, it's just me moving stuff around here, trying to get all of these wires out of my way. All right, excuse me. Now, I did do this in front of the TV the other day, so again, this is one of those things that works fine. And it looks like I've got 1 extra loop here, and I don't have 1 there, but I'm not going to worry about it because I don't need to in this pattern or in this kind of technique. Okay, so I match up the ends there, and then what I'm going to do is just kind of run them around my finger like this. All I'm doing is creating like a little bound bit of wire. So, and you'll see as we start to do that, it kind of winds together. Now, what you don't want to do is sort of like wrap one around the other, because then you have that possibility of breaking them. But by doing this, you'll see here now, see how that's creating like a little, see if I make sure I'm on camera there. It's creating a nice little binding there. And I'm going to see if I can do something. It doesn't always work, but so I do this until I have a fair amount there. So you see how that just kind of binds together, and it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be making a wrapped loop out of this. Now, if you want, what I'm going to try and do is just trim that off there. You might be able to, let me just grab some of my extra beads here. I always make about 3 or 4 samples before I ever do a video. But with this one, I thought, you know what, I'm going to sort of go a little off the cuff and just kind of try things when I'm live. And, you know, because that's how it is for you guys. When you're doing this, you're like, okay, well, how's this going to work? So I like to, you know, play around and do that too. So now you can take one extra bead and pop that right there if you want. And so let's do that today. We'll just, you know, create something different. Okay. So I'm just going to put that off to the side because I don't need to be at that point yet. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to braid this. So braiding is super easy. If you've never done it before, it's a really easy thing to do. And this one, again, you don't have to be perfect. So I just like to braid in my hand, but I'm just going to take that far right one and go to the middle, and then take the left one. Excuse me, my throat is really, there's been so much smoke in the air here. Okay, so I'm going to go into the middle, and then take the right one and go into the middle, and then the left one and go into the middle. And you'll see it start to take shape after a bit. And then I sort of start placing it. I sort of take my beads and it gets all tangled up here. So, and again, trying to do this under camera. I've never tried to do this under a camera. So this ought to be interesting. But I do kind of, instead of twisting it, like I don't go like that. I sort of take it and position it where I want it. And sort of, you know, it doesn't really matter though. You know, this is a very forgiving technique. So I'm just kind of going back and forth. And you will have some beads that are going to kind of pop up like that. But again, don't worry about it. And excuse all the noise because my desk is metal on the edge. But I'm going to try and, yeah, it's just going to make noise. So you're going to just hear noise today. All right, so I'm going to go that way. And then bring this one in the middle there. And I just keep, you know, kind of finding where it kind of is going to lay nicely. And there are ways of fixing that later if it's not where we want it. So basically we're just going to get that braided, and I'm going to just do the whole thing. So you're going to get to watch this whole part just because there's no way to sort of cut and splice this video because I don't have another sample. So I have never sold so much Eslon in my life as I did from that last video with the wrap bracelet made with the crochet and the Eslon. If you haven't checked it out, I'll make sure to put a link below. Please check that out because it was a really fun bracelet and everybody is loving it, and they're popping up all over the place and all over my feed, and everyone's really enjoying it. It's lots of fun to create. Okay, so we're about halfway done. So you'll see how it's creating like a nice little mesh of beads here. And it will look really nice when we're done. It looks like a bit of a hodgepodge when you're first making it, and you're probably all thinking, well, what is she doing? Because that doesn't look like anything exciting, but trust me, it does look really cute when we're all done. So the main thing is to get this all braided, and you can see that they're sticking up, but the nice thing is that this is wire. And I've even made these and broken them and then just pieced them back together. You know, again, because it's not a perfect looking piece, it's very organic. You can take a lot of license with it and just kind of play around. So I am kind of being mindful, but the odd time they just kind of go where I don't want them to go, and I just kind of go with it. So you just don't want to be twisting this wire because you don't want it to snap on you. All right, we're almost at the end. Hopefully I was on camera for that whole thing. And sorry, you will hear a fan off on the side. I had to turn a little desk fan on because it was so hot in here that I can't even hold on to the wire anymore. So I'm ready for fall. If you're watching this in, you know, a weird time of year, this is actually beginning of September, and it's very warm here. Okay, so now I've got my ends matched up there, and they don't have to match up perfectly, but I kind of just make them match. And then we're going to repeat like we did at the beginning, where I just take my finger, I go around and then pull. So we're just creating that little twist there. And you just keep doing that until you have enough to basically do a wrapped loop. When I first started making these to teach, I used to do it a different method. I would keep braiding it. I actually started off with 21 crochet, what are they called? Chains, I guess. I would, or stitches. You guys will have to tell me in the bottom. I'm not a crocheter, so I don't know what they're called. So I would do 21, and then I would continue with beads. Pardon me, but I always like to kind of take things up a notch as I'm, you know, playing with stuff. And I figured that this was a little bit more exciting way to do it. Okay, so we've got our little bound piece there. And just to make life easy, I'm going to just trim that off. And then we've got less wire. Okay, so this is what we've got happening. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make this look all pretty. So what I like to do is figure out which side I want for the top and which side I want for the bottom. So I think this is going to be my top. Now you can start placing the beads where you want. So I don't mind where any of these are, but let's see this one that's underneath here. If you wanted that up to show, you just push it up. And then this one here, I could kind of, you know, boss around and pop it up a little bit. So you just kind of start putting the beads where you really want them to be. So, you know, I'm not making it perfect. Now, the other thing that you can do that I really like is if you've got a gap there, and let's say you don't like that little gap of wire, you just push it together and it kind of makes it go where you want it to go. So I just kind of, you know, boss my wires and my beads around and get it kind of where I want it to. If there's a focal bead that you want, you just kind of, you know, wrangle it through. Sometimes it won't go, but I can usually get it to pop up there. And then you just kind of mold things around. So it's just, you know, this is the nice thing is that no two necklaces are going to look the same. I have made this into a bracelet, so you know, you could do it in a bracelet. You would just do less beads. So now I don't really like the way that looks. So what I'm going to do is push that one over there and then kind of push those wires together. So, you know, just play around until you like what you've got. And I think that's what everybody really liked when I would teach this class, is that perfection is not the name of the game on this one. Sort of that organic look is where it's at. And a lot of people worry about perfection and not being the same as everybody else in the class. So it was like the perfect thing to teach people that this is your chance to just kind of, you know, have fun and not worry about everything being perfect. Okay, so let's push that one there and maybe pop that one. We don't really have too many beads up on the end there, so it goes kind of up. And then you can kind of do that. So there we go. You know, I would probably, if this was my own piece that I was, you know, going to wear, I would probably push these together a little bit so that it ends up a little bit more uniform. So you can see when you do that, it completely changes it. So see how we've got a gap there? If I push those together, it sort of shortens up the gap. So I like a little bit more bunched up look personally than one with a lot of wire showing. So look at that. That completely changes the look of that. So you can see how that would make a really cute bracelet, but we're going to make a necklace today. So the way that I'm going to do this now, so that's the way it would look on you. You could hang a lighter sort of charm or a pendant on there, although you don't want to change the center too much or put too much weight on there. And I would probably put it like more into the center versus hanging it off of an end, because that could break the wire. So I tend to not put anything. I just think that this is enough. I think that's just beautiful in and of its own. So I never worried about adding any extra embellishment. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our glass pearls, and I'm going to put that on there. And now we're just going to make a wrapped loop. So I'm going to put my pliers on the end. I'm going to bend away, and then I'm going to take my round nose pliers and create a little loop. And I don't want anything too large. Create my little loop there. So it looks like we've got a twisted ring on there. And so if you had a little twisted ring, that would be nice. I'm just going to put my soldered ring on there. So this again is, you know, completely up to you, whatever you want to put on there. I'm just looking for a way to attach some chain, so I thought I'd go with a soldered ring. So now we're just going to wrap that around. And if you wanted to be all flourishy, you could, you know, go all the way around like that. And I don't have that very twisted there, so I probably would have twisted it a bit more, but I just want to show you what you can do. You know, you can go all the way around. So I would just go a couple times like that, and then come in and give that a little trim. And then I would take my pliers, and just if there's anything sort of sticking up, I just kind of burnish that down a bit so that there's no sharp edges. We don't want to have anything sharp. So yeah, that wire's kind of sticking out right there. So I'm just kind of pushing that down because I don't want anything sharp. But you see how you can just make something look, you know, really cute like that. I'm just going to straighten that out a little bit, and that's how that looks. So I'm going to repeat on the other end. So I'm just going to pop one of my beads on, and now I would put the same color bead on either end. I think it looks a little nicer to have the same matching on there. And I'm going to kind of push this down. So you know what, maybe if you're making this, if you don't like that little bunch of wire there, just start off with a bead. Don't put the 2 loops like I did on the end. You know, again, I was experimenting as I was creating this. So sometimes, you know, my experiments don't always turn out, but I have not had any time to create anything. We've been so busy with all of the orders that I barely had time to get this done today. So I am not striving for perfection. This is more about a technique today. Okay, so we'll give that a little wrap up. And we'll go around a couple times. And because I did go around for a picture's sake, I'm going to go right around, but that I don't really have enough wire, but I'll make it work. I'll just kind of boss that wire around. So just when I take a picture, it'll look a little bit better. And because this is 26 gauge, it is very forgiving in that it's pretty easy to manipulate. It's just, I don't have quite enough, but you know, I can make things work. There we go. I'm just going to trim that off and then tuck that down. And so I would actually have not cut off as much as I did, but and just tuck that in. And again, if this was like something I was actually going to wear, I would be much more careful with that. Okay, so now we've got our little rings on the end. And so now what you could do is you could take some chain, excuse me, and I don't know how long this is. Let me grab I've just changed my workshop around here, so I do have a ruler. So at the end now we've got that's about 10 inches. So depending on how long you want it, like let's say if we wanted this about 18 inches, I would do about 4 inches of chain on either side. So I'm just going to cut a little bit of chain. So I'll cut about 4 inches there. And then the way that I always cut chain to make sure I have equal amounts is I take a little bit of wire. This doesn't work very great with 26 gauge wire, but it'll still show you how I do it. I take the end of the one that I've cut and the end of the one on the spool or whatever you've got there. I line them up, and let's see if I can do that under the camera. And then I know that that's the one there that I need to cut where I've got my thumbnail, and then my lengths will be the same. So that's just a little trick that I do because lining chain up on your tabletop like this and, you know, trying to match it along like this is really hard to do. So I don't recommend that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just take a jump ring. So I've got one of these small 18 gauge 4mm jump rings, and you'll see that I use those probably the most in my tutorials. They're a really good, strong jump ring. So you need a good pair of pliers to be able to open and close. So I'm going to run that through and then do that up. And then I'm going to repeat on the other side. Okay, so I need one on this end. And do that up. Okay, so now the way that I like to do my ends up is I figure out which side is my front and my back. So this is going to be my front. So I'm going to turn that over. And not that it really looks any different, but you can see that, to me, that definitely looks like the back because I've pushed all the beads to the front. So now on the one side, I'm going to put my lobster clasp because I personally am right-handed. If you're left-handed, you would swap this around and do it the other way around. But I'm going to do up my, or open up my jump ring and run it through the end of my chain. And then I'm going to put my lobster clasp on and do that up. I'm going to open up this last jump ring. So it looks like we needed a total of 4. And we're going to open that up. And like I was saying, I think some people would just use the end of the chain, but that's very hard to get your lobster clasp in there. So I always like to have a closed ring so that when you are opening and closing your lobster clasp, you don't have anything that's going to sort of open up or fall apart. So let me just move all of my tools here and get this situated so you can see what it looks like. So that's what we've ended up with. And, you know, you can really make this your own. Like I said, you don't have to do this part at the top. Mine's not even showing because of the way that it's laying on the mat here. I'm going to just sort of turn it more like this so that you can see. You don't have to do these beads at the top. I never did. I just wanted to show you an option of what you could do. I probably wouldn't do this on the end. I would probably just start with beads so that I don't have that gap. So I would make my first little knot there or stitch, and then I would just carry on with my beads because I personally don't know if I love that. And honestly, if you did this and then you went, oh, I didn't like it, you know what I would do is I would wrap a little bit of wire up here and I would just thread some beads through. So you could actually thread more beads all the way through if you wanted to. So this is very forgivable. Now, one of the things that I really like to do when I was making these years ago is I would make 5 strands. And then I would take 2 and move those to the middle, and then the other outer ones and move them to the middle. So I was doing a 5-strand braid, which is exactly like a 3-strand braid, but you're doing 2, 1, and 2. And it would make a really nice sort of beefy necklace, and it was my favorite. So that personally is the one that I like, is doing a 5-strand braid. You could do a 6-strand, but it gets a lot of strands to try and deal with. So this is super versatile. You can use all different sizes of beads. You know, mixing some 4s in here would be nice. You could, if you were really good with math and could figure it out, you could maybe put like a couple focal beads and try to get them very centered here. You know, it's really, this is a very creative piece where you can really make it your own. So I hope you enjoyed this. So if you did like this, please make sure to give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate everybody that's been communicating online with me lately. It's been lots of fun to have all the comments and all the love that I've been receiving. So thank you so much for that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do so. I do try to put out a video every week, and I also do a live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or Pacific Daylight Time, whatever we're in right now. And, you know, make sure that you come back and see me again. So I want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.